Hello and welcome to this episode of Simply Saturday. My name is Julie and this is Stamp with Julie Baum. On today's Simply Saturday, I'm going to show you another card that is fast and easy to make. We're going to be using these items to create our card, but I wanted to go ahead and show you one completed card just so that you understand where we're headed. Now be sure and stay tuned all the way to the end of the video because I'm going to show you a variety of different cards and styles. So the card that I'm going to show you how to make is kind of floating out there being called the fractured card or the faux shutter card. And this is an example of it. This is one that I made with a piece of paper from Delightfully Eclectic. It's pretty basic and simple, as is the one that I'm going to show you how to make. But it's this design here where it kind of looks like the card was fractured or shattered. It's a really cool design and it's a lot easier to make than you think. So let's get started making our card. All right, so I am using a piece of fresh freesia for my card base. And as I've mentioned recently, you can simply pop over to my website, stampwithjuliebaum.com, to get a list of all of the materials as well as the dimensions to each of the sizes of papers and so forth. So here is my card base. Then I have a piece of white cardstock that's going to be used on the inside. And I have a piece of paper from Delightfully Eclectic, and this is going to go on the front of the card. Now, what I've done on this one is I have created my strips. See, you're going to need 4 strips like this. I've created mine to coordinate, to completely match with my card base. There are different options in this. So I'm teaching you the basics of this fractured card, but you can turn it on its head and upside down and do all different things with it. And that's why I want to show you a bunch of examples at the end. All right. So in this case, my strips match my card base. All right. So the one thing I'm going to do is start with a square that I'm going to glue onto my piece of designer series paper. Now this square has been cut from a piece of white cardstock using the Stylish Shapes dies. And one option that I would have right now, this is the way we're going to do it, but one option I would have is to layer the squares. So this would also be an option if you wanted to get more detailed in the beginning. All right, you're going to see some completed ones where they're layered, but for the basic card, we are not going to layer. So I have my white square. I'm going to place it here kind of in a diagonal position, and I'm going to start out in the center and then slide it up a little bit. You can put it straight in the middle. That's great. I tend to just lean towards liking it pushed up a little bit towards the top of the card. So here we go. I'm just going to use some liquid glue to attach my square. And as I lay it down, I'm going to check my right and left before I press it down. This and this. See, it needs to go over a teeny bit to the left. There we go. I'm pretty happy with my up and down, and press that into place. Okay, that's step 1, very easy. The next step is where we use our little strips. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to be gluing my strips going around. I'm going to teach you the clockwise method. You can start wherever you want, but it seems to be easier if you just choose a method and just stick with it every time. So my first strip is going to go onto my card right here. Now I want it lined up exactly straight with this white edge. So what I have found helpful is to go ahead and place a second strip at that juncture, okay, just like that. Now I'm not going to glue this one. This is strip number 1, but sometimes when you eyeball this one, it looks like it's right at the edge, and then when you get all the way around and you put this one on, it's not quite matching, see, and then you would end up with a gap. You do not want that to happen. So I'm just laying this one here as a guide. This is going to be strip number 1 that gets glued on. Now you can use whatever method you want for adding your adhesive. You can use your silicone mat if that is handy and seems helpful. I seem to find that the way I've been liking to do this is I stick my silicone mat under here. I hold my strip, add my adhesive to the strip while I'm holding it, and then I'm just going to lay it in place. Now, any extra is going to go on here so I don't have a sticky mess. Okay, this guide is being held right there. I'm going to go ahead and glue this strip down, and I want it right up against my white square and up against my guide. And that is it. Strip 1 is in place. You can move your guide at that point. You don't need it anymore. Now we're going to continue going around clockwise. So my next strip is going to get glued into place. Now my strips are about 5 inches long, which is a little too long, except that on this second one, you do need a little bit of a longer strip. So I would recommend at least a 5-inch strip here. These you can see, there's kind of overkill. These could be a little bit shorter if you want. All right, so right up against the strip, right up against the white square. And let me move this up a little bit and lay that one down in place. You can see how that is your longest one. Then we're going to continue going around. So I'm going to glue this next one, number 3 of 4, into place, right up against the other strip and right up against my white square. And the 4th and final one. So I think what's so cool about this fractured card look is it gives the illusion that you glued all these pieces of designer paper on, and you didn't. You're gluing your strips on, and that's what's giving you the illusion of the fracture, like so. Okay, we've got our strips in place. They're all glued down. Now I'm just going to take some scissors, flip this over, and I'm going to cut those extra strips off. Now I will warn you that your scissors are very possibly going to get a little gluey because you probably have a little extra adhesive on these strips, and as you snip, that glue is going to get onto your scissors. So you want to make sure that you have an alcohol prep pad, which I use a lot of the time for many different reasons. Make sure you have one of those alcohol prep pads handy so that you can clean off your scissors when you're done making your card. Okay, so I've snipped those off and tossed the scraps, and I'm left with this. At this point, I can attach it to my card base. So the first fractured card that I made was a fall theme card, and I'm going to show you that. I actually made several, and then after doing those cards, I wanted to kind of use more of a generic paper and theme just to show you kind of the basics. And then of course, depending on the colors or the theme or the occasion that you want to make your card for, you can choose accordingly. All right, so there I have the front of my fractured card. And we're going to go ahead and embellish, decorate the front part. So for this one, I chose to use a stamp from the Bird's Eye View. And so what I'm going to do is take that little bird, and I have a scrap of cardstock. I'm just going to stamp it on here. So once you've got your card to this point, it's really up to you. You could stamp just words here. You can stamp a design. You can stamp and either punch or cut it out and add it, whatever you want to do. So we're going to stamp a bird on scrap paper, finish coloring him, and then cut it out and add it to the card. All right, so here's our cute little bird. Now I have prepared one already and cut it out just so you don't have to sit and watch me do that. But I do want to show you the coloring that I did in case you are curious how I did my Stampin' Blends. So I'm starting out with Fresh Freesia Light and coloring the bird's tummy. All right, then the next thing I'm going to do is add some dark, and As you know, I've told you, I am not an artist. I don't have the eye. I don't understand a lot of the concepts that go into true artwork. But I think I'm supposed to understand that the light is supposed to be coming from somewhere, which means you're going to have highlights somewhere and shadows. So I'm going to use my Fresh Freesia Dark and just put a little shadowing around this left side. Just kind of like that. And then I'm going to come in with my color lifter and pick a little bit of color up off over here on the right side, which would be my highlight side. You don't often see me use the color lifter, even though it is a really handy part of your Stampin' Blends collection. So it actually kind of pulls the ink up. It can be helpful if you make a mistake. Not that it can completely correct it, but sometimes you can camouflage it. And then it's really nice in this instance where you just want to pull a little bit of color out so it looks lighter. Then I took Night of Navy Light and colored the wings. And then also with Night of Navy, I came in here and put a little accent on these feathers, like so. Okay, we're going to use that one more time. I have light crumb cake for the bird's face. And then I chose, based on the color scheme in my designer series paper, I chose Calypso Coral Dark for the beak. And then I'm going to use that Night of Navy one more time and just add a few feathers here up on top, which means that when I cut this out, I need to make sure I kind of go around that. I don't want to cut that edge round with the shape of the bird's head. And then let's stamp the glasses. I think they're so cute and I don't want to miss a chance to use them. So I'm going to ink these up with Night of Navy. I am going to stamp off on a piece of scrap paper and then onto my bird. So I got a little bit lighter version of my Night of Navy ink pad, like so. All right, then with some scissors, snip out all the way around and you end up with this little guy. All right, so at this point, I'm going to attach this to my card. And what I want to do is kind of attach it over here. I've still got some space here, so I think I'll use the words hello there. Now, there are no words in the Bird's Eye View stamp set, so I borrowed these from Darling Details. And I'm just going to go ahead and use that Night of Navy ink pad. Keep it simple. And add hello there to my white square. You could decide at this point to attach this flat or pop it up with some Stampin' Dimensionals. For my Simply Saturday card, I'm just going to glue it on flat. Keep it all very streamlined. And then at that point, I do want to add a little pop with some embellishments. So I'm reaching for my Tinsel Gems 3-pack. I believe that they call these colors Fresh Freesia, Misty Moonlight, and I think Lost Lagoon, which I always feel like this looks more green, but when you put it with Lost Lagoon, it does look like it. So let's add a couple of these. I think I'm just going to stick with Fresh Freesia. So I'll use a large one and 2 small ones. Kind of over here in this white space. like so. All right, we need to put a little something on the inside. So here's our white panel. And let's see, because I'm creating on the fly, I didn't plan what I wanted to do on the inside. I'll tell you this, what I would probably do is grab a strip of this paper and add it to this, but that paper is just out of reach. The stamps are right here. So I think what I'll do is take the tiniest bird from that stamp set. And again, this is supposed to be fast and easy. So all I'm going to do is stamp him in Night of Navy. We're not going to color it. We're not going to do any of that. We just don't want the inside totally blank. So let's just add a little bird friend right here on the inside to carry out our theme, and attach this piece now to the inside of our card. And then, the moment you've been waiting for, I want to show you about 6 other cards made in this fractured style and with other options. All right, there's the inside. Here is the front, and you've also learned a new method of making this cute card design. Okay, let's look at the others. So I showed you this one in the beginning, and this was done with really the same steps. You can see that I've got a white square. I have my crushed curry strips and my crushed curry cardstock, those match, and then my little decoration that I stamped and die cut and some words. All right, so there you have that one. Then I wanted to try a birthday theme. So I did this one. Now here's a couple of differences. So I have a blueberry bushel square. There's the initial square that I started with. Then I added a smaller white square on top. We talked about that before I started the card, how you can layer your squares if you wish. So I have 2 squares there, and then I matched the blueberry bushel strips and the cardstock base, all of those match. So there is a fun one. Now, you might have caught one more thing on this card that is different, and that is that I actually have 2 papers going here. So the way that I did that is I started with the star paper, and then for these 2 corners, after my strips were on, I just laid a piece that was about 2.5 inches square of this paper. I put the glue down over the stars, laid my piece of paper over it to glue it on, and then snipped off the edges. I did that here and here, and that way I have the contrasting papers, and that was a really fun option to test out too. All right, let's keep going. I told you that I made a bunch of fall cards, and I did. So this was one of the first ones that I tried. I love this paper with the pumpkins. It's actually a photograph that then the Stampin' Up! Artists turn into our designer series paper. Here's my fracturing element, my decoration, and the inside. Okay, there's that one. Then I went with the non-traditional autumn colors. Oh my goodness, this is probably one of my favorites. Now, these ones that I'm showing you, I used the All About Autumn 6x6 Designer Series paper. So here's a little scrap of that paper with the non-traditional colors. It has Moody Mauve in it, and it's just lovely. So that was this card, and then as you can see, for this one, it's on a vanilla cardstock base. So I used vanilla strips, and I used my Moody Mauve piece for the square. And then of course I did some little die cut leaves there. That one was very fun to make. I have another fall one with some more of that paper from All About Autumn. This one you get to have the effect of that metallic paper, and then some cut out leaves, a little shabby chic knot. All right, so there's that one. And then I did this same idea, but back in the Moody Mauve colors and also the copper clay. So that one was very fun to do. This one has a vanilla square to start with. This one had layered squares. There's a copper clay square first and a smaller vanilla square on top. So again, you can see the different things that you can do. You can also play with the size of these strips. You can make them a little bit wider if you wish. I tend to be sticking to this size strip. And then I wanted to kind of flip the idea on its head. So for this final example that I'm showing you, this one, I started with a colored cardstock base. This is Pretty Peacock. Then I took a vanilla piece, and at the very beginning, I ran it through the Distressed Tile 3D embossing folder. So this piece was already lovely and textured when I then added my designer paper square instead of a plain paper. So you can see that's a big change there. And then my strips match my cardstock base, and then my decorations. I think that this is very elegant looking. This has been a favorite embossing folder this season. I'm super happy with it. Again, it's called the Distressed Tile 3D embossing folder. And I think that that option is another really valid thing to try when you start making your fractured cards. So let me pull in our card that we made actually during the show today. Here you go. And I'm going to say goodbye for now, but please remember that underneath this video, you can pop open that description box and you'll find a current host code. You'll also find a link to get to my website, stampwithjuliebaum.com, and that's where you're going to find all of the dimensions and the list of all of the materials made that were needed to make today's card. Please get a hold of me if you have any questions. And as always, I love your comments and your thumbs up and your hearts. And if you have not subscribed yet, please subscribe to my channel so you don't ever miss an episode. Until next time, happy stamping.